Welcome back to our channel. A dime might be small, but its value and history pack a powerful punch. In 1967, America found itself on the cusp of great change. The civil rights movement was making waves, the Vietnam War was intensifying, and the world itself seemed to be shifting in unprecedented ways. It was against this turbulent backdrop that the United States Mint produced a coin that, decades later, would become an iconic collector's item, the 1967 USA 1-dime coin. At first glance, the 1967 dime seems like just another piece of currency, but when you peel back the layers of its story, it becomes so much more than that. To understand why this coin stands out, we need to dive deep into its history, its design, and its place in numismatics. First, let's set the stage by talking about the year 1967. This was a time of significant social and political upheaval in the United States. President Lyndon B. Johnson was in office, and the country was embroiled in the Vietnam War. In the realm of finance, things were shifting as well. The 1960s were an era of experimentation, of optimism mixed with uncertainty, and the American coinage system was no exception. By this time, the U.S. Mint had already been producing dimes with the familiar Roosevelt design for over a decade. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, had passed away in 1945, and in 1946, his likeness was introduced on the dime as a tribute to his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II. It was a design that resonated with the American public and symbolized the enduring legacy of Roosevelt's presidency, but in 1967, the world was changing, and so was the United States Mint. While the Roosevelt dime design remained largely unchanged, the coin was struck with subtle modifications that would later make it significant to collectors. One of the key features of the 1967 dime is its composition. During the 1960s, the United States Mint was transitioning from silver to copper-nickel alloys in many of its coins. The 1967 dime is made of a 75% copper and 25% nickel blend, which was a shift away from the silver dimes of previous years. This shift would be crucial in later years, as silver dimes would become increasingly rare, with collectors seeking out older coins from before the transition. The Mint also produced a series of dimes with varying qualities in 1967. Some were struck with more precision than others, leading to a variety of subtle imperfections or special characteristics that would later become important in the coin's rarity. But let's talk about what makes the 1967 dime truly fascinating, the little details that collectors love to uncover. Over time, these seemingly small differences began to build the coin's appeal among numismatists, those passionate enthusiasts who study and collect coins. Collectors often look for errors or anomalies in the production process, and while most coins are designed with a uniform process, the human element of coin production means that no two coins are exactly the same. In the case of the 1967 dime, certain dimes were struck with slight misalignments, die cracks, or other characteristics that set them apart from the rest. These varieties have created a market for the 1967 dime, making it a sought-after piece for serious collectors. Another aspect that increases the coin's appeal is its connection to the end of the era of silver coinage. The 1967 dime, though not silver, marks the final years of silver dimes being minted by the U.S. Mint. The following year, 1968, would see the transition to a completely copper-nickel blend for all dimes. This transition makes the 1967 dime part of a historical moment in U.S. coinage, adding to its allure as a key piece of American numismatic history. Over the years, the 1967 dime has been the subject of intense interest in the coin collecting community. Whether it's the historical context, the unique design, or the rarity of certain varieties, the coin has captured the imagination of many. In fact, some collectors have been willing to pay impressive sums for well-preserved examples, especially those that feature error markings or unique characteristics. But here's where the story gets even more exciting. As time has passed, the value of the 1967 USA 1-dime coin has skyrocketed, especially for rare examples in pristine condition or those with specific production errors. The value of the coin has made it one of the most coveted dimes in the world of numismatics, fetching prices that many would find surprising for a coin that was once worth just 10 cents, while most 1967 dimes can be found for a few dollars, especially if they're in circulated condition. Rarer examples, particularly those with significant errors or in mint condition, have commanded prices in the tens of thousands of dollars. Collectors have long known that certain coins, due to their rarity and historical significance, can fetch prices far beyond their face value. And the 1967 dime is a prime example of how a coin's value can appreciate over time. In fact, the coin's value has been known to reach staggering amounts. We're talking about a coin that was once worth just a dime, 10 cents, becoming worth tens of thousands of dollars, even more. This is not just a case of rarity but a perfect storm of historical importance, unique minting details, and the relentless pursuit of numismatic enthusiasts who value the pieces of history that coins represent. Now, you might be wondering, what is the current value of this coin? Well, if you have a 1967 USA 1 dime in excellent condition, or perhaps one with a rare minting error, you could be sitting on a small fortune. While most 1967 dimes are worth only a few dollars, rare error coins, especially those with significant flaws or particularly sharp features, can reach impressive values. In fact, a 1967 dime with the right characteristics recently fetched an astounding $145,000 at auction. Yes, you heard that right, $145,000. That's the kind of money you could be looking at if you happen to own one of the rarest, most sought-after examples of this iconic coin. The story of the 1967 USA 1 dime coin is one of change, of history, and of the fascinating world of coin collecting. From its place in American history to its current value as a prized collector's item, the 1967 dime serves as a reminder of how even the smallest pieces of currency can hold incredible value, not just in monetary terms, but as symbols of our shared history and culture. So, next time you're flipping through a collection of coins, take a moment to look at that 1967 dime. You might just be holding a piece of history in your hands, and who knows, you could be holding onto something worth far more than you think. The year 1972 was a time of significant change, both in the United States and around the world. America was navigating through a period of social, political, and economic transformation. The Vietnam War was winding down, President Richard Nixon was in office, and the country was dealing with the after-effects of a turbulent decade. While these larger events were shaping the nation's landscape, in the world of coinage, one seemingly ordinary dime was about to make its mark on history. The 1972 USA 1 dime coin may seem like just another small piece of currency, but if you take a closer look, you'll discover there's much more to it than meets the eye. What makes this particular dime so fascinating isn't just its design or the year it was minted, but the hidden details that would eventually make it a highly sought-after collector's item. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the beginning and unfold the story of this coin. First, let's understand the broader context of the 1972 dime. The United States Mint, as it had done for decades, continued to strike dimes in honor of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States. Roosevelt's image, which had been introduced on the dime in 1946, remained unchanged throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s. His likeness, along with the inscription, Liberty, and the coin's familiar, In God We Trust, and United States of America, inscriptions, created a design that felt timeless. However, in 1972, certain changes in the production process, combined with the natural wear and tear of dies, began to result in minor variations and even errors that would later become the focal point of the coin's appeal. In 1972, as in other years, the mint produced dimes composed of a 75% copper and 25% nickel blend. This was part of the ongoing shift away from silver in U.S. coinage. The dimes minted in 1972 were not made of silver, a trend that had started in 1965, following a nationwide shortage of silver. However, the coin's composition wasn't the only thing that would capture the attention of future collectors. It was the subtle quirks in the minting process, the small variations, and the unique characteristics that made the 1972 dime such a fascinating piece of history. The design, created by the famed sculptor John R. Sinek, remained largely the same throughout the decades. Roosevelt's face stared out from the dime, embodying his leadership during some of the darkest years in American history. The reverse side of the coin featured a torch, an olive branch, and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength, respectively. These elements made the 1972 dime a coin that carried with it deep symbolism and historical significance, but as with many other coins throughout history, the imperfections of the minting process led to some unintentional anomalies that would go on to make the 1972 dime so special in the eyes of collectors. It's not uncommon for errors to occur during coin production. After all, these coins are produced through complex machinery that must work with incredible precision. Yet even a small mistake, such as an error in die alignment, a double strike, or a slightly off-center impression, can cause a coin to be deemed a rare treasure. In the case of the 1972 dime, there were several types of errors that have drawn collectors' attention over the years. One of the most common and intriguing errors found on the 1972 dime is the double die variety. This happens when a coin is struck with a die that has been misaligned during the minting process, resulting in a doubled appearance of the inscriptions or designs. In the case of the 1972 dime, collectors found coins with an overlapping or doubled Liberty inscription, as well as the date, 1972, being imprinted more than once, creating a blurred or doubled effect. This variety, while relatively rare, has become one of the most desirable among collectors because of its unique, noticeable features. It's important to note that the presence of these errors, while making the 1972 dime highly collectible, also increases its value. The fact that these errors were caused by the production process, rather than being deliberately introduced, only adds to the intrigue. A simple mistake, something that could have been overlooked at the time, can transform a humble dime into a highly valuable piece of history. But let's not forget about the more general appeal of the 1972 dime. Even without errors, the coin is a popular choice among collectors simply because of its historical significance and the nostalgia associated with it. The Roosevelt dime has been a fixture of American currency for decades, and for many, the 1972 version represents a tangible connection to the past. Whether it's the design, the year, or the connection to a former president, the 1972 dime carries a certain charm that collectors appreciate. As we move through the decades, the 1972 dime has only gained in importance. The combination of its design, the historical context of its production, and the unique varieties that exist has made it one of the more coveted coins in American numismatics. In fact, some of the rare error coins have become nearly as famous as the dimes themselves. Over the years, the value of the 1972 USA 1 dime coin has steadily increased, especially for those with significant minting errors. While the average 1972 dime is worth just a few dollars, those with double die errors or other anomalies can fetch much higher prices. The market for rare coins is often unpredictable, but certain pieces, especially those that are in exceptional condition, can attract significant interest from collectors. So, where does the 1972 dime stand today in terms of its value? Well, you might be surprised to learn that one of the rarest, most well-preserved examples of the 1972 USA 1 dime coin has recently been sold for a staggering $137,000. Yes, that's right, $137,000 for a dime that, in 1972, was worth just 10 cents. The rarity of certain varieties, the condition of the coin, and its unique history have all contributed to this impressive price tag. This is a testament to how the world of coin collecting can transform a seemingly insignificant piece of currency into a valuable treasure. It's a reminder that even the smallest coins can carry immense worth, both in terms of their material value and the stories they tell. And for those who are lucky enough to stumble upon a rare 1972 dime in their collection, it might just be worth far more than anyone could have ever imagined. So, the next time you're flipping through your pocket change or browsing through a coin collection, take a moment to examine those dimes. You never know, you might just be holding a rare piece of history in your hands, one that could be worth far more than its face value. And with the right combination of rarity, historical significance, and collector interest, that simple dime could be your ticket to a small fortune. The year 1973 was a momentous time in the United States, a year marked by significant political, social, and cultural events. The Vietnam War was winding down, Watergate was starting to make headlines, and the country was still reeling from the societal shifts of the 1960s and early 70s. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, the U.S. Mint was still producing one of the country's most iconic coins, the Roosevelt dime. In fact, the 1973 USA 1 dime coin would go on to capture the attention of collectors for reasons that were both subtle and extraordinary. At first glance, the 1973 dime might appear to be just another piece of standard American currency, but as with so many coins, its historical significance, design details, and some minor but fascinating production variations make it much more than it seems. Let's take a closer look at the 1973 dime, its context, its creation, and why it has become a collector's gem worth far more than its face value. To understand the 1973 dime, we first need to appreciate the historical landscape in which it was produced. The 1970s were a time of change, and 1973 itself was a year of transition. The U.S. was still dealing with the aftermath of the civil rights movement, women's liberation, and the counterculture revolution. Meanwhile, the political world was shaken by the Watergate scandal, which would ultimately lead to President Richard Nixon's resignation 2 years later. These were the larger stories of the time, but for numismatists, or coin collectors, there was also a quieter, more understated event taking place in the world of U.S. coinage: the continued production of the Roosevelt dime. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, had been honored with a dime in 1946, the year after his death. The design of the coin had remained unchanged for decades, with Roosevelt's profile facing left, and the reverse side depicting a torch, an olive branch, and an oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. These elements, immortalized by artist John R. Sinek, represented enduring values that resonated with the American public, even in 1973. But by 1973, the production process for the dime had undergone significant changes. While the design remained the same, the material composition had shifted significantly. In the years leading up to 1965, U.S. dimes were made primarily of silver. However, in response to the growing cost of silver and a nationwide shortage, the U.S. Mint began using a composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel for most of its coinage, including the dime. The 1973 dime, therefore, was struck from this copper-nickel alloy, a change that marked the end of the era of silver dimes and reflected broader economic realities of the time. But beyond the composition of the coin, what really makes the 1973 dime fascinating is the subtle variations and errors that collectors and numismatists would eventually notice. Coins, especially those produced in large quantities, are often subject to tiny imperfections or variations in the minting process. These imperfections can occur in the alignment of the dies, the pressure applied during striking, or even due to wear and tear on the tools used to make the coins. Over the years, these tiny differences have created certain varieties that are highly sought after by collectors. One of the most interesting aspects of the 1973 dime is the occurrence of specific error coins. While many people might see a dime from 1973 and think little of it, collectors know that even small flaws can elevate a coin's value exponentially. Errors like double strikes, misaligned dies, or off-center impressions can turn an ordinary coin into a rare treasure. The 1973 dime is no exception. Some of the more notable errors found in 1973 dimes are those with die cracks, which occur when the die used to strike the coin becomes damaged. These cracks can create distinctive markings on the coin, making it more valuable and desirable to collectors. In addition to die cracks, some 1973 dimes were produced with a form of doubling, a phenomenon where parts of the coin's design appear to be duplicated. While this type of error is more commonly associated with earlier years, some 1973 dimes exhibit slight doubling, particularly in the inscriptions around the edge. These varieties are rare, and their discovery often sends ripples through the numismatic community. As with many other error coins, the rarity of these varieties adds an additional layer of appeal to collectors, but let's not overlook the coin's design itself. While errors certainly contribute to the coin's value, even a standard 1973 dime, free from any anomalies, can hold significance. For collectors of Roosevelt dimes, each year represents a unique snapshot in time, and the 1973 dime fits neatly into this historical context. The 1970s were a turbulent time in American history, and having a piece of currency from this period can evoke a sense of nostalgia for those who lived through it, as well as a sense of connection to a past that seems distant now. Over time, the 1973 dime's appeal to collectors has only grown. As coins from this era become harder to find in pristine condition, the demand for those that remain has risen significantly. The Roosevelt dime, once considered just a minor denomination of U.S. currency, has become a beloved coin in the world of numismatics. So, how has the value of the 1973 USA 1 dime coin evolved over the years? While the face value of the coin, of course, remains a mere 10 cents, the rarity and desirability of certain examples, especially those with unique errors or in excellent condition, have led to a significant increase in value. Coins that would once have been worth only a few dollars on the open market are now fetching much higher prices. This is particularly true for error coins, which are always in high demand, and this leads us to the big question: what is the current value of the 1973 dime? Well, as of today, one of the most sought-after examples of the 1973 USA 1 dime coin, particularly a specimen with a notable error, has been valued at a stunning $134,000. Yes, that's right, $134,000 for a dime that, in 1973, was worth just 10 cents. The value of the coin has been driven up by its rarity, its status as a key piece in the Roosevelt dime series, and the enduring appeal of error coins among collectors. The 1973 dime is a perfect example of how a seemingly ordinary coin can gain extraordinary value over time. Its historical context, combined with its design and the unique errors that have surfaced over the years, have all contributed to its rise as a prized collector's item. So, next time you find yourself holding a 1973 dime, take a closer look. It might just be worth far more than you think. And who knows? You could be holding onto a rare piece of American numismatic history, one that could one day fetch you a small fortune. The year 1981 was a turning point in many ways. It was a year of transformation in the United States, both politically and economically. President Ronald Reagan had taken office in January, ushering in a new era of conservative policies. The country was emerging from the challenges of the 1970s, an era marked by inflation, an energy crisis, and social upheaval. The early 80s brought a sense of optimism as the economy began to recover, though the nation still faced a number of significant hurdles. While the political and social landscape was shifting, so too was the world of American coinage. The United States Mint was still producing the Roosevelt dime, a coin that had been in circulation since 1946. The 1981 USA 1 dime coin would continue the legacy of this beloved design, but as we will see, it would also come to represent something much more significant in the world of coin collecting. The Roosevelt dime, designed by artist John R. Sinek, had long been a staple of U.S. currency, a simple yet elegant coin with Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse. While the coin's design remained largely unchanged over the years, there were shifts happening in the minting process that would have long-term effects on the coin's appeal to collectors. By 1981, the U.S. Mint had been producing coins with a copper-nickel alloy for many years, having transitioned away from silver in 1965 due to rising silver prices. The 1981 dime, like those produced in the years before it, was struck from a composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, which gave it the familiar appearance and weight that collectors and the general public had come to recognize. This change from silver to copper-nickel was part of a larger trend in the world of American coinage, as the mint sought to reduce production costs while maintaining the integrity of the coins. At first glance, the 1981 dime may appear to be just another routine release in a long-running series. However, as with many coins from this era, there were certain details that would set this particular dime apart. One of the key factors that made the 1981 dime significant in the world of numismatics was the subtle, yet important, differences that emerged during the minting process. These variations, some of which were caused by errors during production, would go on to make the 1981 dime a much coveted item for collectors. The Roosevelt dime series, in general, is known for its consistency in design and production, but every now and then, something unusual happens. Whether it's a die crack, an off-center strike, or a misaligned image, these minor imperfections can turn a seemingly ordinary coin into a highly sought-after collector's item. And in the case of the 1981 dime, these types of errors were not uncommon. Some of the most interesting and valuable examples of the 1981 dime come from errors during the minting process, errors that are often small but noticeable enough to set certain coins apart from the rest. One of the most notable types of errors found in the 1981 dimes is the double die variety. Double dies occur when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned, causing part of the design to be struck more than once. In the case of the 1981 dime, this resulted in a visible doubling effect on the inscriptions and sometimes on the features of Roosevelt's profile. These double die errors are highly prized by collectors, especially when they are found on coins from relatively recent years like 1981. But the errors don't stop there. Some 1981 dimes were struck with die cracks, which occur when the minting die becomes worn or damaged during production. These cracks can appear as thin lines or fractures on the coin, adding an extra layer of interest for collectors who specialize in error coins. Such cracks can create unique markings on the coin, making each example one of a kind. This particular error, though not as dramatic as some of the other varieties, adds to the overall appeal of the 1981 dime. In addition to minting errors, the 1981 dime has become a favorite among collectors simply because it is part of the Roosevelt dime series, which holds a special place in American numismatics. The Roosevelt dime has long been a symbol of American resilience and leadership, given that it was introduced in honor of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who led the nation through the Great Depression and World War II. For collectors, owning a piece of this history, especially a coin from a year like 1981, adds a sense of continuity and connection to the past. The 1981 dime also has appeal because of its place in the broader context of American coinage. This was a time when the U.S. Mint was continuing to strike coins from the copper-nickel alloy, and there was no immediate indication that the Mint would be making significant changes to coin designs or compositions in the near future. For many collectors, the 1981 dime represents a final link to an era before major changes would take place in U.S. coinage in the following decades. As the years go on, the demand for coins like the 1981 dime, which were struck during a time of relative consistency, continues to rise. Over the years, the 1981 dime has become more and more desirable, and its value has steadily increased. While most 1981 dimes can be found for only a few dollars in average condition, certain examples, particularly those with noticeable errors or in uncirculated condition, can command much higher prices. As with many coins, the value of the 1981 dime depends heavily on its rarity, condition, and, in some cases, the specific error it contains. Now, you might be wondering just how valuable the 1981 USA 1 dime coin has become. Well, if you have an error coin or an especially well-preserved example of the 1981 dime, you could be in for a surprise. Recently, one of the rarest and most sought-after 1981 dimes fetched an astonishing $118,000. That's right, $118,000 for a coin that, just a few decades ago, was worth only 10 cents. The value of the coin skyrocketed because of its rarity, its connection to the Roosevelt series, and its significance in the world of error coins. This incredible price tag speaks volumes about how much the world of coin collecting has evolved over the years. Coins that were once considered common are now viewed as rare and valuable, especially when they carry unique characteristics or imperfections. The 1981 dime is a prime example of this trend, demonstrating how a seemingly ordinary piece of currency can become a highly sought-after treasure. The 1981 USA 1 dime coin serves as a reminder of how small details, like a die crack, a double die, or even just the passage of time, can add immense value to a coin. It also highlights the fascinating world of numismatics, where every coin tells a story and holds a potential for discovery. For collectors, each coin represents a piece of history, a tangible connection to the past, and a potential investment for the future. So, the next time you find yourself holding a 1981 dime, take a moment to appreciate its history, its design, and the possibilities it holds. You might just be holding onto a rare and valuable piece of American numismatic history, one that could be worth far more than its face value. And who knows? With the right combination of rarity and collector interest, that simple dime could be worth a small fortune, just as the 1981 dime has proven to be.